I'm diverging again from the order of worship. Recently I've been reading the letters of Paul. And in the past I read the Bible many times, but in the past, I read it as a letter that Paul is writing to somebody else. And that somebody else may be deviating from what he believes is the right way to worship Christ. But this time I'm reading it this time, it's an unfolding mystery story. And so it has become for me this exciting reading that I've never put in. I mean, we know that there are some Bible stories that are very exciting to read. But this time the letters of Paul are a very exciting story about his travels and his time in prison. And one of the things that comes out in a glaring kind of way, that Paul never lost heart. Even when he was in prison, and he wrote many of his letters while he was in prison in Rome and elsewhere, he was still writing as if he were a free man, surrounded by abundance. He still is uplifted because of his worship of Christ. And that never came through to me before in the same way that it is now. So if you don't read the Bible, I would encourage you to read Paul's letters, but I would start with Acts. Luke, who wrote Acts, talks a lot about Paul. And then go on to the letters of Paul, particularly Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. But I would encourage you to stay away from Hebrews. I'm reading Hebrews now, and boy, I have to pray that I understand what he's talking about. Because sometimes I just don't know what he's trying to get across. Wildwood, New Jersey. Wide, sandy beaches, blue skies, good food, and 2 days of sermons and singing. What more could one ask for? Well, since Cindy and I went down a day early, we spent some time in Cape May, walking the beach and going to the wildlife sanctuary. When each of you pauses and remembers for a moment your time at the Jersey Shore, you can almost smell the salt air and hear the rustle of tree leaves, the calling of birds and the lapping of ocean waves as they crash on the sand. Remembering those times when we would chase the receding waves and they would chase us back up the beach again. What a rest, what a blessing. The face of God in the beauty of his creation. The conference hall where all of the meetings and some of the meals are held is right on the beach. And if you are up early, you can go to an early morning communion service that is held overlooking the ocean. In the spirit of true confession, I didn't make it. There are hundreds of people on the boardwalk, not all of them headed toward the conference hall. But as one approaches the front doors, there is a crush of young, middle-aged, and old, the spry and the infirm, and some in wheelchairs, and all eager to go in. The Spirit of God in the community of his people. As one enters the building, the halls are lined with booths providing information, selling books, and telling about available mission trips. After registration, the first room on the left is the Cokesbury bookstore. And if you are a book lover, it is hard to resist spending time looking at the books that you would like to purchase. Halfway down on the right-hand side of the hallway, of this wide hallway leading into the conference rooms, is a booth that had a display of vestments, many of them imported from around the world. However, I learned in conversation that many of the most beautiful ones are made in a small shop right here in Sussex County. My temptation to purchase one quickly ended when I noticed that the $250. For me, this approach stimulates my anticipation for the next 2 Spirit-filled days. For those of you who have been here a long time, Blair Gould was there and said his father still talks with fondness of Harmony Hill. John Callanan, as conference historian, also conducted part of the meeting. And since many saw him recently in our own church, we know what a thoughtful speaker he can be. Prior to this year's conference, there was a 40-day pray period where each participant was asked to pray for one aspect of the church and the conference on a daily basis. 40 days of prayer, reflecting the importance of that number in both the Old and New Testament. Noah, 40 days of rain. The children of Israel, 40 years in the wilderness. Moses, 40 days on Mount Sinai to receive the commandments of God. The wilderness and the 40 days that Jesus spent there. 40 days between the resurrection of Jesus from the grave and his ascension into heaven. And in each story, at the end, a miracle occurred. The power of God as evidenced in his miracles. Can we imagine what miracle might happen in this church if each member prayed for 40 days, asking for the presence of the Holy Spirit, and that God direct us toward a miraculous event? What would that miraculous event be? Why limit ourselves to 40 days? Let us make a commitment to pray for our church every day for the next year. In doing so, we would see miracles everywhere. In today's church, there are more members than there are attenders. And that is true of our church also. We need to pray for a miracle that turns that around in our own lives and in the churches today. 2 guest bishops this year were the bishop from Puerto Rico and the bishop from Tanzania. Bishop Ortiz, the bishop from Puerto Rico, related that a recent Hurricane Maria came into Puerto Rico with winds of 170 miles an hour, the strongest hurricane that ever hit the Atlantic Ocean. 100% of the island was without water and electricity. And although the official count of those who died was less than 70, actually the number of people was in excess of 600. Closer to 700 died as a result of a single storm. 70,000 homes were destroyed, and over 2 million homes suffered damage. In every community, churches were destroyed, and most of them will never be rebuilt again because the parishioners don't have the money needed to rebuild those churches. Recently, somebody asked me where I saw God in my life. My almost immediate response was, God in poverty. I see God in poverty. Yes, and no matter where we look, we can see the face of God calling out for justice. Now, justice, in the modern sense of the word, tends to be seen as Lady Justice with a balances in her hand. But when we look at the Bible and we talk about justice, it's not that balance beam seeking out whether somebody's can be adjudicated guilty under the law or not. It's talking about the balance beam that draws everybody into a balance with each other. Justice for the poor, justice from the rich, justice in the middle class. We need to keep that in mind when we think about the justice of God. Puerto Rico needs a miracle created by human hands to rebuild that impoverished island. The face of God in the suffering of his poor. One conference report stated that in the United States, on average, in order to afford a two-bedroom apartment requires full-time employment with a wage of $21 per hour. Minimum wage is a little over $10 per hour, and those who work in places like Friendly's earn $2 an hour, depending mostly on tips in order to make ends meet. The other day at ShopRite, since I know most of the people who check us out there, I have friendly conversations with them. And I asked how much I could earn at ShopRite bagging groceries. About $8 an hour was the reply, or $64 before taxes and other deductions for standing on my feet for 8 hours as a service worker. We don't need to look very far to see people in poverty. Our sister country, Tanzania, and by the way, when you hear more about miracles everywhere, you'll understand that Tanzania is going to be, both Tanzania and Puerto Rico are going to be recipients of a special offering this year, as we've had special offerings in the past. It'll be a 3-year special offering period where we make a commitment to support those two efforts. And I'm sure Pastor Nancy will be talking about that more in the future. For Puerto Rico, it's to try to help rebuild the country. In Tanzania, it's to try to bring more people in as ministers for Christ. Tanzania, the typical education is less than high school level. The Methodist church there is a growing church and has not enough ministers to go around. Can you believe that? There are not enough ministers to go around in Tanzania. And here in America, we have a lot of ministers. We have too many ministers, and in such churches as the Episcopal Church, they don't know where to put them anymore. What do you do with all these ministers? Because so many people want to minister to congregations that unfortunately are getting smaller and smaller. So, 70,000 homes were destroyed and over 2 million homes suffered damage. In every community, churches were destroyed, and most of them will be never rebuilt again because parishioners don't have the money to rebuild them. It seems to me that I'm going over things that I've already said, but I'm going to continue because this is important. When I was asked where I saw the face of God, I said, I see it in poverty. Poverty is all around us. And no, I am not going to work at ShopRite for $64 a day. Our sister country, Tanzania, and Bishop Mumboyo is assigned to lead the North Katanga Episcopal area, of which Tanzania is a part. He told us how the efforts of our conference are helping in their work, especially in the effort to establish a training center for new ministries. The overall goal for their ministry is to raise $5.2 million. Truly a miracle in the making. As you can tell, this year's conference focused on miracles, not only the ones given by God, but also the ones created by all of us, working toward what we are praying for. In his first sermon, Bishop Scholl spoke of the extravagance of the miracles of Jesus, especially the first when he turned the water into wine at the wedding at Cana. Our bishop has a good sense of humor, and he told a story about a group of nuns who raised cows in order to support themselves. They were gathered around Mother Superior, not long for this world, praying for a miracle, just a few last words of direction to help them on their way. To assist her, they gave her a sip of water. Nothing happened. Next, they tried some warm milk from one of their cows. Still nothing happened. Finally, unbeknownst to the Mother Superior, they gave her a shot of whiskey and a glass of warm milk. Still praying for words of direction. Suddenly, Mother Superior sat up, clutched herself, and cried out, "Don't kill the cow!" Miracles everywhere. On a more serious note, he told a story of when he was a bishop in Maryland and was speaking at the General Conference. In the middle of the message, one of the clergy stood up from his seat and started walking down the aisle. At first, our bishop thought that something was wrong. And when the minister arrived at the platform and waved him over, the bishop knew that something was wrong, really wrong. The bishop went over to the edge and bent down to hear what the minister was saying. And the minister said, "I am sitting next to a blind woman, and she just said that her sight has returned." The bishop asked the minister to go back to his seat and bring the blind woman forward. When the bishop asked her a few questions, she confirmed that she had been blind, and now she could see again. Bishop Scholl asked her to go and see her ophthalmologist, and when she got back home, and to give him a call, and she did that. Later, Bishop Scholl told the ophthalmologist, and he confirmed that she had been blind and that he could not explain how she had received her sight again. We need to have a change in our perspectives. We may not realize it, but God wants to break in and do something that we have not thought about. Just as in the Gospels, God is ever present and is ready to deliver this church. We needn't be caught up only in our current activities. It's no longer business as usual. God has something greater in store for us. Our prayer can be, God, we want to have an encounter with you today. God, make your will known to us. Turning water into wine was an extravagant gift from Jesus to the wedding gift. Jesus is an extravagant gift from God to us. How can our church be extravagant in its mission? How can we be extravagant in our mission? Where will we see the face of God? Amen.